Yeah, I found these the other day and I thought it was brilliant. So I want to talk to you about my first experience of branding. This is way before I'd done any professional work. So I want to tell you a little story. It's back in 2006. I was about 17. I can't remember if I'd been at the record label, if I was working at the record label at the time. Anyway, we were at my grandparents' house. My dad was reading a newspaper article about the rise of the surf brands in the 90s. He was reading specifically about a brand called Animal. They're not as big as they were, but Animal used to be quite a big British surf brand. And they started by printing t-shirts and selling them out the back of a van. Today, everyone's like, oh, of course, that's what you do, merch and all that. But back then when they were starting, it wasn't the done thing. If you were doing fashion and fashion brand, you would have been going to a big manufacturer, having large units manufactured and all of that. And so it was this idea that it was a bit more guerrilla tactics. They got hold of some t-shirts, they did some screen printing themselves. And this is just going off memory. This might not be the story at all, and I might have over-embellished it, but this is what I remember from the conversation with Dad. Anyway, my dad read this article and we were chatting, and we obviously did a lot of surfing at the time. Between Dad reading that article, us going on holiday, talking about businesses and surfing and all of that. And one night we were sat on a summer's evening outside my parents' house, and Dad asked for someone to go get him a potato. And he did, and he cut this potato in half, and then he was just whittling away, and then he and carved out this little logo, asked for some paint to be brought out, and he painted up this potato, and he printed it. And this is what came out. This is the original, first ever Surfbod print. It's actual paint, that is. This isn't a scan or anything. And he lifted the potato off, and we all looked at it and was like, that's pretty good. That was the start of this fun little business venture called Surfbod. And so my brother, who was much more artsy at the time and into his graphics and had a copy of Photoshop or some editing software, he then took it and started to develop the mark even more. So I think this is a hand drawing, a pen drawing. It's got his little signature in the corner with Mark 1. And this, once he had pulled that out of the original potato print, really we felt like we were onto something. And so between Patrick, myself, and Dad's original print, Dad even did some hand lettering. This is like the typeface that he first did. Here are some others. These are all hand drawn, hadn't reached the computer. But once we'd scanned it in, we got this transfer paper. This is like transfer paper that you could print on like a home printer, and then iron this onto a t-shirt. And so that summer we printed off some designs, ironed them onto t-shirts to take down on our summer holiday with us. And as we were down there, sort of further developing this little business idea, Mum found a wooden belly board. This is way before the belly board hype of the last few years. And she brought this pink belly board. The Indo board had just come out, the balance trainer, and Dad was like, well, what if we had a balance trainer? What if the Surfbod, what if the product was a balance trainer? It wasn't just t-shirts. And so we went to B&Q in Cornwall. We brought a couple of these belly boards. Some of them were like the full length, some of them were the half lengths, and we brought some fence posts. We painted them up and started messing around with them as a balance board. And what was unique about our balance board was the Indo board, you placed it in the middle and the axis was like this, and we turned it so you had a long pole that ran the full length of the board, and so you were balancing on it like this. You had far less surface area, making it more challenging to balance on. Trying to do a balance board with fence posts and the fact that they're slightly knobbly and not perfectly round meant that these were challenging things, but we painted them up, and Dad made some more stamps that we stamped images on. And anyway, that was like the start of Surfbod. As I got more savvy with the internet and the software, we developed some cooler t-shirts, had a go at pushing it, and I also tried building a couple of surfboards, which was really fun. It was like it was just an awesome time, actually, of just locking myself in a shed and crafting away at something. And that was my first sort of jump into running a business. And I say running a business, it was very basic. I was messing around with my siblings, giving it a go, trying to push it on Facebook and get some sales. But I did manage to shift a few units to family friends and stuff, but it wasn't a business. But it gave that core foundation to, you can create something, you can develop it, you can sell it, or market it and sell it. And in those days, it was great fun to have this little brand, to be able to work on the images, to take the photos, to make the videos. And maybe, yeah, in another life, I should have pursued it harder with how the internet developed. And I've thought many times about resurrecting Surfbod and bringing it back to life. But yeah, I found these the other day and I thought it was brilliant. And I was just reminded that my first experience of branding was this logo made by my dad from a potato print. And again, it's a bit like the logo video I was talking about the other day about the importance of sketching or using analog processes. You just never know what you're going to create. To be able to make that mark and then develop it further, that was a catalyst for being independent, doing things yourself, experimenting, trying to find a way. And with all of that, we had enormous fun. Like my brother Patrick made loads of stuff. I've only got these are just hand drawn, but he did loads of other graphics which I think were on the hard drive that died. But Patrick's always been really into his art. He was like a big comic book fan, a big manga fan, and has always been able to make some really, really cool stuff. And then me and Fred would be in the shed with the spray cans and everything else. So yeah, that was the start of my branding journey. So I've really got Dad to thank for all this quirky way of approaching things. My dad was a maker as well. He built me, when I was very young, a fancy dress costume out of cardboard boxes, and I was a dragon, and my brother was George and the dragon, and like that was one of my first trophies. It's the one that I'm proudest of. Was turning up as a dragon, and at this village fair, and I've got this. There's a proper silver cup. That was like a first place fancy dress. Having Dad as someone who was raised in a generation outside the computer, he was a draftsman, which was his apprenticeship, so technical drawing. Dad also done paintings. He painted murals around the house. He also painted on a lot of our furniture as kids. One of my favourite murals that he painted in what was my room at the time, I was really into, I don't know who the author was, but it was a book that had these pirate characters in, and it was just really fun. Anyway, Dad looked at that and he painted the ship from that on the wall, and it was my bedroom, possibly my bedroom, or my brother's bedroom, or mine and my brother's bedroom, I can't remember. But there were boys in that room with that pirate ship for a time. And then one of my sisters moved in, and because it was such a nice painting, they repainted the room but painted around the mural so it stuck. But then it was like my sister's room with this pirate ship in for a long time. That it got finally painted over, but luckily I was able to grab a snap of it. And so Dad having all this sort of old school wisdom when it came to making stuff or different techniques. Again, one of the reasons I got into filming was Dad had this big old Panasonic camera, and when we were young, we got these Action Men toys, and Dad spent an afternoon trying to do like a stop motion with us, where he'd take snaps on this video camera, and we moved the Action Men around and created this it took hours, and we created this 5-second video. And it's something that I do with my kids now. Stop motion has always been something I tinkered with over years. Again, I'd done for Surfbod and made a stop motion video with this hoodie that was walking around, and it walked around the house and eventually walked into the shed where I was making surfboards. Stupidly, it was on YouTube, that one, and I deleted it. And again, it got lost when this hard drive died, and it's just now when I want all that archive stuff to be able to share, I've lost it. But actually, when I was at the record label on one of the big video shoots, there were these guys doing this stop motion animation for the music video that we were working on. And I remember just immediately when I saw them and they were clicking away on their photos, I said, I know what you're doing. That instant connection between that thing that we did as kids for a bit of fun is being used in this professional capacity. But not only that, I understand the process. And that was sort of a light bulb moment of like the things that you do as a kid have value in the world as an adult. And so again, like with the Surfbod stuff, the Dad carving a potato, that has real world value. It's like, get me the potato, get me the lino cut. Let's make some noise with pots and pans to be able to make a soundtrack. Do the stop motion thing. let's approach this completely differently. Let's approach this like a child would. And in that, it's all exploration, and that's where the greatest stuff happens. I'm not saying you're going to build the most unique stuff. I'm not saying you're going to tread new ground, but you might tread new ground for yourself. You might actually go beyond your own limits. Doesn't mean that someone else hasn't been there before, and I think that's okay. It's that great artist still everyone is copying. I think people get really hung up on being original, but so often you're being original for yourself. You think you're being original. You've been influenced by stuff, definitely, and then you'll find something that's really similar. It's that thing, like the amount of times you write a melody, you're like, oh, this sounds good, and then someone will walk in and be like, that's so-and-so's melody, and you're like, oh, you're right, it is so-and-so's melody, it sounds just like it. Why do I say all this? What is the point in me sharing these stories? I think what the Surfbod story teaches us, which has always rung true for me, is if you limit your options to a potato, it can give you a really good starting point. And so the limitations are the things that allow us to be creative. And when you're on your next project and you get stuck, just remember, get the potato.